Hello friends, Amy R here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Today's video is the first of many videos coming this month using some of the exclusive collaboration sets released during the month for STAMPtember with Simon Says Stamp and various companies. So today's cards are featuring the Studio Katia collaboration, and not only is there one collaboration set, there's a second set, which I will show a little later in the video. I made a second card using it because not only is it STAMPtember, but today is Heidi, the owner of Simon Says Stamp. It is her birthday today. She is doing a buy one, get one free. So if you purchase this stamp set, this is the Floral Bunches set or Floral Bunch set that is the limited edition collab, you will get the other set for free. And if you buy this set with the coordinating wafer die, you will get the other set with its coordinating wafer die for free. So I will have more info on that in my blog post, which will be linked directly below the video. And yeah, for those new to STAMPtember, it is just literally the biggest kind of party in our industry through this entire month. Heidi started this 11 years ago now. And throughout the month, there are all these limited edition collaboration sets with a whole bunch of different companies. And these sets are exclusive to Simon Says Stamp, and they are limited edition, meaning that once they sell out, they're gone, they're not restocked. And it's just exciting and fun. And again, I'm going to have a ton of videos, so much inspiration. It's nuts, and I love it. So I stamped this floral bunch onto Arch's cold press watercolor paper, and I used VersaFine Clair Morning Mist ink. Usually I use the Nocturne, which is the black that I love, but I went a little more subtle this time. It's right now, like looking at it, it doesn't look really different, but it is quite more subdued than the black. And that was because I wanted to use this Prima Vintage Pastels palette that I've had sitting here for I don't even know how long. I literally went to order it again because I was like, ooh, I've been waiting for this. And then I discovered it was sitting with all my other Prima palettes. And yeah, so I wanted to use it because the color's really pretty. And you guys know me. I love florals. I was really excited when I saw this set. I was like, this is perfect. And the other set. And I totally understand why Heidi couldn't decide between the two, because usually it's only one set, you know, as part of the collaboration. And this was a way to get around it. And I would have done probably the same thing. It's like, ooh, let's do the second as a giveaway. So anyway, I stamped it, and then I taped my watercolor paper to a hardboard and then painted it with the palette. I super sped up the painting. It was pretty basic though. I just did a quick little, you know, zhuzh of paint kind of around the outside with the lighter grays in the palette, and then painted all the florals, let it dry, added some purple splatter from the palette, and then I pulled out my Ranger Gold Perfect Pearl. This is me mixing it up. Usually I just use the regular, just Perfect Pearl that I show in almost every other video basically to do all my splatter, but I thought the gold would look really pretty with these like pastel colors. So I just mixed it right on my hardboard here. So I had some water, grabbed a paintbrush, mixed it up, and then splattered it onto this background. So I've got just that shimmery gold splatter. And then same thing, let this completely dry, remove the tape, and then I'm going to die cut this first with the largest of Simon's A2 rectangle wafer dies. And this largest die is A2 sized. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I'm also going to use one of the A2 thin frames wafer dies. And rather than run this through twice, I just decided why not tape it into place and just die cut this in one pass. So I'm just reusing that painter's tape and just lining everything up first. So the larger wafer die is just going to cut this into an A2 size like shape. And then that inner die is the frame one, so it's going to cut that really thin frame. I've done several videos using this. I love these thin frame dies. They're just such a nice way to add a little something extra. So I die cut that thin frame, and then I ran the thin frame, the same size wafer die, through my die cut machine with Tonic's Gold Pearl Satin cardstock. This is another favorite of mine. I do have backups because I use this all the time and I never want to run out. So I die cut that frame with that. So I removed the one that from the watercolor paper, and then I'm going to use the gold one instead, of course. And then my card base is Simon's Fog cardstock. It's an A2 size card, so top folding A2 card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I have it lined up, the inside of it lined up in my MISTI here, and I'm going to stamp that floral image again, this time with Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide ink. The color went perfectly with this watercolor palette, and it's another one of those times where I pull out a color I don't reach for very often, especially with the Distress Oxides, and it's so pretty. I'm literally just staring at it right now, and it's like, why don't I use this all the time? It's the prettiest color. I love it, and I love how it looks on the Fog cardstock. It's just like the perfect match. It just made me so happy. So I need to use Victorian Velvet more often because it is just a gorgeous color. So I stamped the floral bunch with that. The sentiments from that same set, and I stamped that with that same Morning Mist VersaFine ink. And then to adhere the card front watercolor panels, frames, etc. Normally, I've shown in like a bunch of videos, I start with the outer frame and I adhere it to my card base, and then I do the inner frame and then the inner piece, and it's fine. But rather than sit and fiddle, I decided to flip it all over, use my painter's tape to tape all these pieces together, just inlay them the way they should be, tape them all together, and then I can apply the adhesive to all 3 pieces all at once and right over the tape. And then adhere that in one go. This is so much easier. I don't know why I never thought of doing this months ago when those thin frames first came out. I use these so many times, and this just literally makes it just so much faster. So I applied a more generous amount of the craft tacky glue than I normally do because, again, this is Arches watercolor paper, and it's very textured, it's very heavy, and I find that a little bit, not tons of glue, but just a little extra glue just helps really hold things down, and it's good to go. So I adhered that, and because that largest rectangle wafer die is the size of the A2 card, it completely covers the card base, and then I've got that gold little frame inlaid in there, and it just makes me happy. So I adhered that into place, and then I grabbed a scrap of Simon's Slate Gray cardstock, and I'm just going to line this up in my MISTI as well, and I'm going to use another sentiment from the Floral Bunch stamp set. So I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock. Very generous with that. Brush away the excess. People have been asking me about this lately, like, why do I brush off the anti-static powder? If you've got, you could literally see it on the card, like there's like blobs of the white powder. If there's too much of the anti-static powder, the stamp is just going to pick up the powder and not actually stamp onto the card, if that makes sense. So it's not always necessary, but for me, it's just become habit to apply the anti-static powder, brush off the excess, and then start stamping. So I stamped the sentiment with Clair embossing ink. I embossed it with Simon's gold embossing powder, and then I trimmed it down with my paper trimmer. And then after I trimmed it down, I'm going to add Simon's Big Mama foam tape to the back of this, and that is going to give it that little extra bit of dimension that I love. So got that applied, and then I can peel off the backing and then pop this onto the card base. And then once that's popped into place, I of course am going to add some extra bling in the form of some of my favorite Studio Katia crystals. So I have the MALLOW crystals, which are those really pretty purple ones. I just used those in a video the other day. And then the gold sparkle crystals. These are clear crystals with a gold glitter in them. Love. So yeah, I have tons extra of the gold sparkle ones, of course. So sprinkled those throughout this card, and then I'm going to adhere them into place with dabs of the craft tacky glue and my little Studio Katia embellishment wand. And this finishes off card number 1. So I super sped up, like extra sped up, the process for the second card because it's very similar. The only difference is I'm using the freebie stamp set. This is the set you will get if you purchase the first one. And I stamped this as well onto Arches watercolor cardstock using the Morning Mist VersaFine Clair ink, watercoloring it with the same Vintage Pastels palette. The only difference is this time I'm going to do a slimline card because I thought, why not? You guys know I love slimline. So I did very simple watercoloring again, just did like kind of an outline around the image with the lighter grays, and then painted in all of the florals, dried that really quickly with my heat tool, add the same purple watercolor as a little bit of splatter, and then I'm going to splatter on that gold Perfect Pearl powder mixed with water, because of course, and then let it dry, remove the tape, And then this I'm going to die cut with the new SLIMLINE nested rectangles wafer dies. Another already favorite. This was part of the STAMPtember release that came out 2 days ago, not even the 1st of September. So anyway, I'm going to hold this in place with that painter's tape as well, and then I can die cut this. And then for my card base, I am using that same Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock. So I'm going to die cut that first, and then off camera I also stamped and heat embossed a sentiment from the same set onto the same slate gray cardstock. And then my card base is the Fog cardstock again. So I cut my card base to 7 inches. So it's 7 inches by 8.5 inches. So then I can score this at 3.5 inches. So this will be a 3.5 inch by 8.5 inch slimline card. So I use my little score buddy for this and my Teflon bone folder. So put in a good score line, fold this in half, got my card base. And then I wanted to do something on the card base itself since you'll actually be able to see it this time. So for that, I am using the DECO Squares stencil from the STAMPtember release. And this I'm going to line up because it's not wide enough to fit across this entire card base. So I'm just going to make sure I have it lined up because it's going to make it easier to line it up. This is another one of those stencils that the way like the pattern repeats itself, it's really easy to line up and repeat. So I just lined it up, used the same painter's tape to tape off the one side so I don't end up getting any ink where I don't want it. And then I'm blending on Simon's Cobblestone ink onto the card base with one of my little Studio Katia blender brushes, and not worrying about the center because you're not going to see it because I'm going to adhere the watercolor piece right there. So then after I blended it around the edges, I just shifted the stencil over to the other side of the card base, taped it down just to hold it in place, and then quickly blended the ink. Same thing, just all around the edges of the card front, just like so. And then I'm going to fold the card inside out. So I have just the inside of the card here. Line this up in my MISTI again, and I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the first card. I'm going to line up that big floral stamp again on the inside of the card, and I'm going to ink it up with that Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide ink. Stamp that, and then I will line up a sentiment from this set as well along the bottom of the inside of the card, and I'm going to ink that up with that Morning Mist VersaFine Clair ink. So ink that up, stamp that into place, and then I'm going to adhere the watercolor piece with that Big Mama foam tape. And then the sentiment that I'd heat embossed onto another scrap of that slate gray cardstock, I die cut with just a circle wafer die. And then I'm going to pop that on with the Big Mama foam tape as well. And then I'm going to add a bit more of the gold sparkle and the MALLOW crystals. And that's going to finish off card number 2. So, like I said in the beginning of the video, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. And there'll be info about this limited edition set, the freebie, etc. I will also have a supply list with links to everything I used, including these sets for you to check out. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting, all of it. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned. I have tons. Like when I say, you know, I'll see you very soon in the next video, I really mean it. There's going to be a ton. It's so much fun. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.